West Michigan. We're still talking with Michael Herring, and he is our attorney of the day. And we're talking about the problems that people get into, fall into, or trapped into as they grow older. And it's usually because they have not planned in advance. And nobody told them that they should plan in advance. So Michael will probably tell us part of what we should know.
Yeah.
We'll never know it all.
No.
That's where we come to see him.
And really what we're trying to do is give as much information so that you can make the best decision for you. And it's, like we've been saying all day, it's a moving target. You are going to have to try and make the best decision that fits for you, and the best way to do that is go out and get as much information as possible. I mean, half the time I talk to people, I feel like I'm more of a teacher, and even the other time I'm the public service announcement saying, "Whoa, you don't really want to jump into something like that too quickly, or take some time on that."
Well, a lot of people have good ideas, but they don't come out that way.
And everything seems to revolve around money nowadays. And
everything is money.
Everything is money. And so
no free lunch.
You can find me a free lunch, give me a call.
Just wait.
So when people come in, they're concerned about it. They've worked hard all their lives for it. They want to keep it protected. And if you're in that, there's a few things that you can do to avoid any complications. There's a few things you can do to make it easier for you. But one of the things, too, is we were talking about the healthcare power of attorney. There's another power of attorney that goes along with that, and that's the money power of attorney. And now, when you have two people, like we were talking about in our example, everything is usually jointly owned. So the healthcare power of attorney isn't as important then, because what that does is it says somebody can act in my place if I become disabled so that they can run my business transactions for me. And so if you own everything together, you don't have to worry about it as much because it's your checkbook and your husband's checkbook or your wife's checkbook, and you don't have to worry. Now, when it's down to one person,
yes, our survivor.
The survivor, that's when the healthcare power of attorney becomes, or not the healthcare, the business power of attorney becomes more important. But there's, I hate to say it, but there's perception and there's reality. Reality is if you have a nice relationship with your kids, or things tend to work themselves out. So you have it, and hopefully you never have to use it. It's always good to have it just to be safe, but the reality is you end up not using it as much as you would think, because what the typical timeline is that the second spouse or the spouse dies, and then you go from there to you're on your own for a while. And as things progress, there's usually one child, or maybe even more than one child, that comes in and they kind of help out a lot. They're running you around, doing your groceries, running the errands, helping in day-to-day aspects. And as the years progress, that child is relied on quite a bit. And as you start to deteriorate, you end up relying more and more on that person, and that person usually ends up paying most of your bills for you because you're put onto the checking account, and they end up taking care of most of that responsibility just as a natural flow. So you don't really have to use that power of attorney. Now, when you would need it is if something were, if your health care were to go down and you needed to transfer funds that you might be more than a checking account. So like your ETF, your CDs, your IRAs, your 401ks, 403bs, if you go into a nursing home and you need to cash those in, that person needs to be able to take a piece of paper and say, hey, I need to cash these in for this person so I can put that money into the checking account so I can write checks with it so that I can keep the mortgage paid, or that I can keep the power on so that when, if something happens. So it's there and it's good. But as I described that to you, the importance of choosing the right person for that becomes very, very important, because that document, they can essentially step into your place and do anything that you give them authority to do. So it can take banking, mortgage, checking, anything they want to. They have carte blanche to do. So you really have to weigh the pros and cons with it. And I always recommend making it a springing power of attorney, which is that it doesn't come into effect until you become disabled, which is essentially you can take it in, but you have to have a doctor's note too.
Well, what if you wanted to have, well, let's pick one of your children, and you just feel that you would have greater ease of mind if you pick that child to be your power of attorney, both medical as well as financial, so that you do have that peace of mind. Any problems with something like that? If
you feel comfortable with it, I don't have any problems with it. I can tell you some of the things that I've run into, and if you feel like, well, I trust my child, or I don't think that will happen, then I would say yes, absolutely. It's your decision, and you can do whatever you want. Now, I can advise you and say, well, I've run into this problem, I've run into this problem, and I've run into this problem. But again, it's sort of like picking. You can also, the thing that you have to worry about is fighting, and you have to worry about, what that person can do with that authority. So if you do the healthcare and you pick one child, like I said, you want to look for certain things, and it's the same thing with the business. You want to look for, there's people in family who aren't good with money. And you don't want to pick that person to be your power of attorney, because if they're not good with their own money, they're going to be less. That's at a double negative. Less good with your money. So weigh your options. Think of the considerations that you should make, and then make the best decision that you can. Now, if you're completely hamstrung and you don't have anyone else to pick, well, that's up to you.
Is that when you turn around and pick a close friend, or would you even consider asking an attorney to take it over?
Well,
because supposedly that would be someone who has no.
A neutral third party. If that's the case, I would probably, if you're really that concerned with it, I would probably stay away from doing just a private person. Again, it depends on the individual, but I would think maybe it would be better to just put it into a trust and then having a trustee do it, because then you would be. It depends on what you're. Oh gosh, it depends on so many factors. But if you're in that situation, because then you have a neutral third party, and they may take out fees, but if you're really concerned about it, it wouldn't be as bad. You can designate whomever you want, just not the attorney that writes it for you, because that's a no-no. But anyway, you can. It really depends on your. But I would be first and foremost, what people look for is they look at their family first, and if you can't or don't want to go with a family, then at that point, you're casting a wider net and saying, well, what would be the best option? And you do have options. So it's good to have these things so that you never, what I would say, it's never a problem until you don't have it.
Yes.
These are the ones where if you don't have it and you're laying somewhere thinking, doggone it, I wish I would have had that, you're really in a bad way.
In other words, it would be to sit down with somebody in your profession and get some pointers. Are there any places where they have sessions to talk about these different things?
You can look around.
Because people have no idea what to expect. And when the problem starts in the family, everybody's in an uproar because nobody knows which way to turn, how to go about things. And one person will be chosen, and it won't be the easiest job, that's for sure.
And at that point, you're into estate planning, which is a whole nother conversation. And that is...
someday we'll get into that, too.
I hope so.
If you don't run out of talk.
That'll never happen.
Let's take one quick break, and then we'll be back.